Hi, everybody. Oh, I see Dana's in the chat, so we can start the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. As always, I want to remind everybody that I am answering questions from patrons and members that were submitted ahead of time first. So if you're watching live and you're in the chat, hi, everybody in the chat, please hold on until I have gotten through all of the member questions and the patron questions, and then I will spend the rest of the show hanging out in the chat and talking about whatever y'all want to talk about. So let us now turn to the first of the patron and member questions. And that first question comes from Brian Wuga Salas, who says, as a practice, I enjoy coming up with the silliest fan theories whenever a show has a mystery box plot line. Sometimes I accidentally get it right. My current pet theory is that Murph is Chakotay. What do you think about fan theory culture, and do you have any pet theories you've held on shows during their run? I look at fan theory culture similarly to how I view most other like subcultures, like furries, for example. I'm not a furry. I can't imagine ever being a furry, but furries seem to make people who like that sort of thing very happy, and I wish them nothing but the best. Right. And I think that's wonderful if that's a thing that they can do and it's a way that they can engage with fandoms, or if they can cosplay and have fun, like do whatever you want. That sounds wonderful. Good for you. Uh, I am not a fan theory guy. I do not find most fan theories to be particularly interesting. Although, I mean, the idea of Murph being Chakotay is really funny to me, but like, it's nothing that I spend a lot of time engaging in. It's kind of like people who fan theories and like people who have really elaborate head canons. It's kind of a similar thing. And I don't really do that either. You know, it's just not how I connect with the shows and the movies and the comics and whatever that I'm into. Like, it's just not the way my fandom works. So it's not really my thing, but I know a lot of people really get a kick out of concocting really elaborate fan theories to explain things or put things in different context or whatever. And I think that's great. But it's not really my thing. And so I don't really have any. But I'm glad that people do, and I'm glad that people have a good time with it. Oasis, if you could pull any one character out of the Star Trek universe to meet them, who would it be and why? For my money, I think that I would have to go with Odo because of his unique perspective on humanoids. Not to mention, he just seems like a chill dude to be around. Sorry if I stole your answer. No, I probably wouldn't say Odo. I mean, Odo is great. But if I could only meet one character out of the entire Star Trek universe, who would I want to meet? I mean, probably Cisco, Captain Cisco, Ben Cisco. Yeah. Because he's a baseball fan and we would have something to talk about. I mean, that's the thing. Like with with most of the other Star Trek characters, like, what would we talk about? You know, like if the idea is you pull them out of the fictional universe so you can meet them and have a conversation, like, I wouldn't want it to just be me like quizzing them about stuff or seeking their perspective on stuff. I'd want it to be like, you know, an interaction. And I know that me and Cisco would have something to talk about because, you know, we both dig baseball. So we could talk about that. You know, like part of me thinks like, oh, of course I'd want to meet Riker, but like me and Riker don't really have that much in common. You know, like I like jazz, but I'm not like a big fan of it. I can't quote you chapter and verse of like, you know, great jazz albums or great jazz musicians. Like I'm just sort of a dabbler in jazz, whereas Riker is like all about it. So he would, you know, like, you know, I mean, I guess we could hang out and just listen to jazz records. That might be okay. But with Cisco, I feel like we could actually talk baseball. So I think I would go with Cisco. Saint Swibbins, I know that you are a big fan of Roger Ebert's reviews. Are there any current movie reviewers that you would recommend for current films? Not really. Not because there aren't any, because I'm sure there are some fantastic critics. I just there's since Ebert, there hasn't been another critic that I have like really sought out. There are lots of critics that I read, you know, when I read movie reviews of new films that come out and stuff, but there haven't been really any that I've latched onto or that I've identified as like, ooh, you know, they're really great. movie critics. I don't really have a name for you because I just, you know, I read movie reviews these days sort of incidentally. You know, I read them if there's a movie out that I'm interested in and I see that there's a review posted on Roger Ebert's website, which of course still exists, but it's other critics writing it, or like the AV Club or something. I'll read it, but I don't really identify the reviewer. So sorry, can't really help you. Party pooper. How stringent should the much needed laws be regarding the crime of decorating for Christmas before Thanksgiving? Also, should each state pass their own law about it, or is this a big enough issue to go to the federal level? Oh, it should definitely be a federal law. There should be a federal law making it if a private individual or a corporation puts out Christmas decorations before Thanksgiving, you should be allowed to damage their property, and you should be allowed to murder them. Like, I mean, technically it wouldn't be murder because it would be legal. But I mean, yeah, if anybody puts out Christmas decorations, and that includes Walmart. So you know how Walmart puts out the Christmas decorations like the day after Halloween. If they pass this law, and if Walmart puts out the Christmas decorations the day after Halloween, then you should be allowed to basically loot Walmart and burn it to the ground. And the cops can't touch you. It should be perfectly legal, and Walmart has no recourse because it's a fuck around and find out situation. They know the law. You know that you're not allowed to put out Christmas shit until after Thanksgiving, and you did it anyway. So this is what happens. And now you get to be the example. That's how it should be. Anything you do to someone when they put out their Christmas decorations before Thanksgiving is over should be nice and legal. And I feel very strongly about this. So yeah, and it should definitely be a federal law. David Colby! I forgot to submit a question last time. I recently finished a new video game, Pentiment, a murder mystery set during the 1500s in the Holy Roman Empire, which was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, and was barely a the. The game was fantastic, with great mysteries and lovely characters, but what I found most interesting was the depiction of Christianity as both a community-building, empathy-creating system of beliefs that helped to glue the town together through hard times, and a system that repressed, extorted, and dominated society. My favorite bit was when you have dinner with the family you're boarded with, and they have porridge and barely enough bread for you, none for themselves. Then the abbot invites you to dinner that same day to discuss the tension in the village about the tax hike he instituted, and he's eating peach cobbler and venison off silver plates. Long story short, the villagers burned the abbey down. Good thing this is all history and not happening now. Not a question, but I'm really glad you enjoyed that game. And thank you for sharing. Eric Byer, you have spoken at length about writing you have regarded as not very good. Might you recommend some books, TV shows, and other media you would cite as examples of especially good writing? Maybe besides DS9, since I feel like you covered that pretty well. Thanks. Well, I was thinking about this earlier, and I would like to sort of stick in my answer to TV shows that are currently in production. And the one that really comes to mind first and foremost is Abbott Elementary. If you are not watching Abbott Elementary, you are doing yourself a great disservice. It's only in its second season, but it is so well written and so funny. And it's one of my favorite shows at the moment because it's been so satisfying to watch it grow creatively, to watch it find its voice, because last year was its first season, and it's about a group of teachers in a Philadelphia elementary school, and it's a comedy. It's kind of like it's like The Office, you know. It's a single camera kind of a mockumentary style where the cameras are explained as being a documentary crew, and the characters talk to the camera and all that. It's like, you know, it's The Office. It's a mockumentary style sitcom, and for about the first 7 episodes of the first season, it was clear that it had potential, but it just couldn't quite pull it all together. You know, it would have little flashes of potential, and you could tell that the cast was there, and It just needed to find that one thing. It needed to figure out a way to just pull everything together. And then around episode 8 of season 1, the show did its first like really, really good, really funny episode. And it's been off to the races ever since. It is such a good show. It is firing on all cylinders. It makes me laugh so much every single time I watch it. And it's one of the shows that I look forward to the most every week. It's fantastic. So I would put that right at the top of well written current. I mean, it's well acted too. Like again, the cast is fantastic, but it really comes down to the writing, and the writing has been ever since about episode 8 of season 1. The writing has been just virtually can't miss. It's fantastic. I highly recommend Abbott Elementary. Also, another one, again, a current show, and this is also a comedy on HBO, Avenue 5, which is a sci-fi sitcom. It's about a group of people who are sort of stuck on a space luxury liner that gets knocked off course. And instead of taking like a 6-week trip out into space and back to Earth, now they're because of the way their orbit has been altered, they're going to be stuck in space for years. And so it's all of these people who thought they were taking a vacation on basically like the outer space version of a cruise ship, and they end up stuck on the ship for years. And again, such a funny show, really smart, lots of really sharp satire. Hugh Laurie is in it and he's fantastic. Josh Gad is in it and he's hilarious. Like, it's a really great cast and some really funny episodes. Episodes recently that have touched on issues of politics and social issues, but in a really sharp, satirical, funny ways. I would rate that very highly as well. But Abbott Elementary right now is probably my favorite currently in production show. Michael Hanneline, hey Steve, do you think that the way mental illness is depicted in Batman is harmful? I worked in mental health care for 15 years, and over time, I became more and more aware of how media depicts the mentally ill and how it seems to be getting worse rather than improving. Republicans frame mass shootings as solely a mental illness issue while having little interest in mental health otherwise. Horror movies and police procedurals both frequently cite the mass murderer's mental health history, and most of Batman's rogues gallery is frequently cited as criminally insane. Don't get me wrong, I'm a Batman fan. That's part of why I'm your patron, but this is a facet of the canon I'm very critical of. Do you think it can ever be fixed? His enemies almost all being mad is a really entrenched concept at this point. Is it central to the themes of Batman? Would changing this require a complete reboot to the franchise? One could probably make a whole video essay on the topic. It's sort of like last year, I think, or the year before, Dana and I did a series of videos together talking about Batman related topics. And one of the things we talked about was how Batman's behavior and Batman's role in society could be seen as being fascist. Like, is Batman a fascist? And my response, my attempt to solve that problem is the same as how I would attempt to address the problem of the depiction of mental illness, which I agree with you is an issue. And I think the best way to handle it is to acknowledge it and to make it a part of the story. If the problem is the way mental illness is depicted in Batman, acknowledge that and don't just acknowledge it to sort of lampshade it and hope it goes away. Make that a part of the story. Make it part of the story that if these criminals are all dealing with mental illness, part of the problem has to be the way that Gotham City provides or doesn't provide resources for mentally ill people, and the way the police treat mentally ill people who commit crimes, and make that part of the story. I don't necessarily think you need to do a version of Batman where none of the criminals deal with mental illness. Although I think it would help if you do also tell some stories where some of the villains are not clearly supposed to be mentally ill, where it's just about more neurotypical villains like gangsters or people who are not supposed to be quote unquote insane or criminally insane. that might help as well. But in terms of the classic characters like the Joker or the Riddler, or the ones who are usually, you know, cited as the mentally ill Batman villains, I think you need to make that part of the story in a meaningful way. And I think that really would help to address the issue. If the story itself is aware of the problem and is knowingly making that part of the story, I think that can go a long way toward helping that. But that's just, and that's the same thing I would say about the, you know, Batman possibly being a fascist, or Batman being too authoritarian, or Batman being too violent. And, you know, the fact that Batman is a rich guy who beats up mentally ill people. Make that part of the story. Make that a question that you as the writer ask the audience. Is this okay? Should Batman be doing this? I think that's a really provocative question that you can ask about Batman in Batman stories. I think that's one of the most interesting angles to look at the character through. Yeah, he's Batman. He's a great adventure hero. He's a great character. He's fun to watch and to read and to, engage in his adventures. But if we imagine that he's a real person, should he be doing this? Like, is what he does good for Gotham City? I think that's a really interesting question that unfortunately not very many Batman stories have engaged with. Duan, happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate it. I've known people that don't. My question is, have you seen Wakanda Forever and did you like it? I have not seen it. I am waiting until it comes out on Disney Plus to see it. I'm looking forward to it, though. The reviews have been good. The reviews actually made it sound better than I thought it would be. Not that I expected it to be bad, because I thought the original Black Panther was fantastic. And Ryan Coogler returned to write and direct this one too, so I assumed it would be good. But from the reviews, it sounds like it's been very, very. It's been received as very good. So I'm looking forward to watching it. But no, I have not seen it yet. I will not be going to the theater to see it. I will wait until it comes out on Disney Plus, just like I'm going to wait until Black Adam comes out on. I guess HBO Max is where it'll come out first. Wait for streaming to see that. Spider-Man got me to go to the theater last year, and Batman got me to go to the theater earlier this year, but that's probably about it. It's going to take more. It's going to take a movie that I'm like really, really desperate to see to get me to go to a movie theater when COVID is still, despite everybody pretending that it's no longer a thing, but with COVID still being a thing and me not wanting to go out in groups of people any more than absolutely necessary. Danny K. Hi, Steve. I'm in a bit of a bind. I have a friend who I've known for a long time. Don't want to go too deep into it, but he said something recently of a socio-political nature and behaved in such a way that crossed a line. It wasn't anything about me personally, but it was hateful and ignorant. I've always felt like he was kind of a dirtbag, but in a benign, harmless sort of way. Now he's veered into being a malignant dirtbag. It has me questioning our friendship and if I want to continue it. Have you ever had to deal with a situation like that? Thanks. Hope you're doing well. I've never had to deal with it with a close friend, but I've had to deal with it with semi-close friends and acquaintances and such. And my solution was to just drop them and stop hanging out with them. I'm not telling you to do that. If this is someone who you've known for a long time and, you have a lot of history together and you would think twice about just saying, hey, this is it. We're not friends anymore because of what you said or what you did. I mean, I respect that. I don't know what the situation is. I don't know where your head is at. I'm not, it would be very presumptuous of me to just say, don't be their friend anymore. Fuck them, But that is my instinct. I mean, for me personally, that is where I tend to go reflexively in that situation. Life's too fucking short to waste time hanging out with shitty people who do and say shitty things. And it's not your job as their friend or anybody else to try to fix them, to try to stop them from being shitty people. Now, if you think that maybe deep down they're not a shitty person and you can somehow show them the error of their ways and pull them around, by all means, if you think it's worth it, give it a shot. More power to you. I hope you succeed. But more often than not, I think that is a waste of time, and it's better for you to cut bait and move on. But again, I don't know the entire situation. I don't know how easy that would be for you to do, either practically or emotionally. So I'm not telling you to do that, but that is what I would at least be considering if I were in your situation. Shad Sterling, the elections went way better than I thought they might. We didn't drop the GOP, but they have a smaller majority than predicted in the House and are still in the minority in the Senate. I'll still vote against Walker in the runoff. Well, that's good. You should. And best of all, most of the GOP candidates who lost have accepted the result. Hopefully, that means there won't be any violent mobs trying to prevent the winners from being inaugurated, though I am concerned about what the election deniers who won their elections might do in 2024. The result is good enough that it doesn't motivate my planned question as I thought it might, but I'll ask anyway. As democracy dies in the US, what democratic countries might make a good home for a monolingual English speaker? And at what point does it make more sense to vote with your feet for democracy than to stay and fight, possibly literally, for democracy? I have not done a whole lot of serious research into like where I could go, but I mean, monolingual English speaker, that's me, so I would be in that exact situation. I mean, the obvious place is Canada. I'm not crazy about cold weather, but I hear that the Pacific coast in Canada is not so bad in terms of cold. It's basically like the Pacific Northwest in the United States, which makes sense. It's the same continent. The weather doesn't care about the border. It's the same area. Um, so that might be like Vancouver, I hear, is lovely and relatively temperate in terms of weather. So that might be an option. If I wanted to or was able to financially to just pull up stakes and move to the other side of the goddamn planet. I mean, Australia and New Zealand seem nice, but that might not be an option for everybody. And, it also depends on which country will let you in. Like different countries have different immigration policies. And it's not like you can just show up at the border and say, hey, I want to live here now, um, unless they decide to take you in as a refugee. Maybe if Trump gets elected again and you show up at the Canadian border and say, just please, I'm a refugee, let me in. Maybe that will be something. But no, I mean, Canada's probably the top of my list of possibilities of places to go. But again, I haven't put a lot of thought into it. And things would have to get a lot worse and a lot more hopeless for me to seriously consider that. Like, there are many, many times, whether it's an election result or something like the mass shooting that just recently happened, which was the latest of a seemingly endless series of mass shootings, and not just mass shootings, but mass shootings that seem to specifically target minority groups. Things like that happen, and I get frustrated and I get upset, and my first thought is always, God, I hate this fucking country. And of course, the thought enters my head of, God, I wish I didn't have to fucking live here. But I've never gotten to the point with it where I was seriously looking at options for where to go. So however bad it has to get, I guess it has to get worse than it's been. But yeah. Oh, Canada, I would say. Agent Meister, who only smokes cigars made of $50 bills. Peldor Joy, Steve. Guess who's coming to dinner? Well, sort of. I'm making my way from Ireland to New Orleans to run a half marathon. You want to meet up while I'm here in the U.S.? It could be somewhere between the Big Easy and Hagerstown. I was thinking Nashville. You can buy me a soda, and we can talk about Star Trek. I have no doubt you'll find my rapier wit as smooth as the oil from a freshly pressed olive. I'm joking, of course. We'll split the price of the soda, don't worry. Seriously, though, commiserations on Trump throwing his hat in the ring for 2024. It galls me that the world in general and the U.S. in particular will be subjected to that braying jackass and his acolytes spewing brainless, bigoted bile for the next 2 years. All we can do is hope that it will be only 2 years and not 6 if he actually wins the damn thing. Oh, and if you do want to meet up, I'll be the guy sporting a pinstripe suit, monocle, bowler hat, and cane. Jolly good show, old sport. I think I mentioned this question to Dana earlier in the week, and she suggested Chattanooga, actually, because I feel like the only reason is just purely selfish, because that would be far more convenient for her, and that she could meet up with us too. It's a long way to drive for me. even halfway between here and New Orleans is like quite a trip for me. And I realize I'm saying this to someone who is traveling like across the sea to get here. So maybe it's not that far for you, but unless circumstances change, I will be politely declining that meetup opportunity. But yeah, the nice thing so far about Trump announcing that he's running again is it seems to have been met by not very much enthusiasm from anybody. So that's encouraging. It feels like a lot of Republicans, including Republicans who have supported him up until now, are just kind of not wanting to do that again, or just sort of like, no, let's find somebody else. You know, it feels like the bloom is off the rose. Which, I mean, their policies and their beliefs are still absolutely vile. I mean, there's really no meaningful difference between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. So it's not a good sign for the country, but it's a good sign, you know, I guess for our nerves and our wits, that it seems like the Trump candidacy is not going to be the cultural sort of juggernaut that it was the first time. So, you know, let's hope so. Let's hope so. General Contact Unit Problem Child. Have you ever stopped wanting to watch or consume a piece of art or media you like because you've come to associate it with the memory of a bad experience? Remember, I told you I was upset because I got partially booted from an online community I like. That community had been holding TNG watch parties over the last year. Now, even though it's been one of my favorite shows since I was a kid, I kind of can't think about TNG without remembering I got myself banned from an online space I like. Something similar happened with the cartoon show Steven Universe a few years ago. I really like it, but I kind of can't rewatch it now because there was a time when I was suffering with insomnia and I took to watching Steven Universe when I couldn't sleep. When I watched the show, I remember how shit I felt back then. P.S. My favorite bit with the DCAU Batman is from a Justice League episode where a psychic is trying to put him to sleep and he's resisting. What do you think? And I watched that clip. I don't think I had seen that before. I'm not really a Justice League completist, so there's a ton of the Justice League cartoon that I have not seen. But yeah, that's a good clip. I don't know if I would say not my favorite, you know, DCAU Batman moment, but yeah, but that's a good choice. I have never had that experience myself. You know, not being able to, or not wanting to watch something because I associate it with a negative experience. But I feel like that's not necessarily peculiar to me, but that is a capacity that I have that I know a lot of people don't, the ability to sort of separate things, you know, to have an association between a piece of art and something negative that I remember, but still be able to enjoy the piece of art, you know? And honestly, I can't really think of an example right now of like a movie or a show or, you know, something that I closely associate with a bad experience. I can't think of anything. So, but even though it's not something I have an experience with, like, I totally get that. I totally understand. I have had friends and people close to me who have, you know, felt the same way, who don't want to watch a particular thing anymore because it reminds them of this other thing, you know. Like, I think that's completely normal. I don't think there's anything, I mean, it's unfortunate because, like you say, if you're a big fan of the show and then something happens and you associate it with a negative thing and now you feel like you can't enjoy the show anymore, like, that sucks. That's terrible. But I mean, I think it's understandable. Stephen G. Clenard. Hey, Steve, guess who's excited? Guess who's getting excited for Picard season 3? Me. I think the genius of Star Trek Picard 3 bringing back the crew of the Enterprise D is that it gives the creators an opportunity to tie up loose threads of character stories. After all, TNG only had 7 seasons and 176 episodes, so some character arcs were inevitably left dangling. Perhaps the characters I most look forward to seeing again are Chief Engineers McDougal, Argyle, Logan, and Leland T. Lynch. Viewers never got a complete explanation for why the Enterprise had 4 chief engineers, nor why they were unceremoniously dropped and replaced inexplicably by Geordie LaForge. LOL, what? My headcanon is that these 4 were in a polyamorous relationship, colloquially McLowland Guile, whose radical egalitarianism extended into their professional lives. Although the TNG writers' room was eager to explore this relationship, Rick Berman squashed all such storylines because he sucks. How do you think STP3 will handle McLowland Guile? I'm hoping that they just devote all 10 episodes to that. That's what I'm hoping for. If recent successes in streaming television have taught us nothing else, they have taught us that you can do a 10 or even 12 episode season of a streaming series where almost nothing fucking happens for the entire time. And there will be a group of people who will just lap it up and beg for more and call it the greatest thing they've ever seen. So you could do a 10 episode Picard season where, like, I mean, they've already teased the classic crew coming back together. So you need to have like Worf and Riker and Crusher and everybody. Like you need to see them. Like they need to show up every once in a while, but just have them come in and out. And for the most part, you just focus on the lives of McLowland Guile. And of course, they're all still together. They're all very happy, living together on some planet somewhere. And the show is just 10 hours of mostly them just basically just sitting around doing nothing. You know, and maybe every third episode you could have something significant happen. But other than that, it's just them sitting around doing nothing. And I guess that's fine for some people. But that's what I would just focus the whole series on them. And don't come up with like a story for them to take part in. Just follow. Let's just follow them around. What are they up to? What's their life? What are their lives like? When's grocery day? Do they live on a colony where maybe there's limited power and they can't just replicate everything? So they have to go to the local grocery store? That might be fun. You know, who does the shopping among McLowland Guile? I sure would not be interested to know that, but I bet a lot of people would. So that would be my suggestion. Black Cover 95, I just finished your Thanksgiving video. How do you decide who says what? Referring to the Stuffy and Friends Turkey Day video that went up yesterday. And, you know, I'm quite happy with. I was pleased with how it turned out. Deciding who says what in the riffs when we're actually watching the movie is one of the last steps in the writing process. Usually what I do is I watch the films that we're going to be riffing. I just watch it straight through first, and then I watch it again, and I'm just writing lines, and I'm taking notes of time codes so I know, okay, at this point, this is the joke that I want. And I'm just writing jokes, and I'm not, sometimes I'm thinking about which character might say them, but I'm not writing that down yet. I'm just writing lines. And then once I get through the entire thing, and sometimes I might even do another pass with it just to, you know, see if I can come up with anything else, or to see if there's multiple jokes that I had in mind that are too close together and I need to drop one or something. But once I've got it worked out where I know what the jokes will be and when they will be, then I go through and I read it for character. And I think, okay, what would be, is this a Stuffy line? Is this a Steve line? Is this a Jack line? And I assign them to characters based on just which of the three of us does it feel like that would be their line, you know? And sometimes I'll read it and I'll think, well, if I rephrase that a little bit this way, then that can be a Jack line. Maybe as written, it doesn't quite sound like something Jack would say, but if I rephrase it, I can make it a Jack line. And I think the three of us have different enough personalities, you know, and it's not strictly like siloed, but I feel like Stuffy's lines are usually a little more whimsical. Jack's lines are usually complaints or are kind of, or tinged with like bitterness or anger. And the lines that I take myself are usually a little darker or a little weirder or a little more esoteric. And, you know, and again, like there's crossover there. Like it's not, I get all the weird lines and Stuffy gets all the whimsical lines and Jack gets all the bitter lines. Like there's, you know, we each does a little bit of everything, but yeah, that's the last stage, or one of the last stages in the writing process, is going through and assigning jokes to characters. And then, you know, there's also the issue of, oh, Stuffy's had 5 jokes in a row. Maybe I need to go back and can I rewrite this one to make it something that Steve could say, or can I rewrite this one to make it something that Jack could say? Like I want there to be enough of a balance. I don't mind giving a character 2 or 3 lines in a row, but I don't want one character to go off on a run and the other characters just be silent unless there's like a reason for that. So there's stuff like that to be considered too. But yeah, it's one of the last stages. Good question. Isaiah Taylor, I'm angry. I'm angry of how my LGBTQ plus have been treated as of late. So, I'm a logical soul. What is all this nonsense about drag queens and grooming? I don't even know what the fuck grooming even means. If this was at all true, where are the kids claiming they've been groomed? You would think that there would be mass stories about such incidents, but there simply isn't happening. You would expect news agencies would be camped out at schools and daycares ready to swoop up the latest news reports of grooming. None of that has happened. Personally, if I was a member of the LGBTQ plus community, I would start arming myself. So if a bunch of Proud Boys decided to attack a gay bar, they will get what's coming, and I will support their actions. Steve, maybe I've been too comfy in my life, surrounded by cosplay, Star Trek, and my other hobbies. We live in dangerous times. We as allies and oppressed groups need to understand that every day our lives are in danger. Thoughts? Well, yeah, I mean, that's been one of the most common thoughts I've seen expressed by members of the LGBTQ community in the aftermath of this most recent shooting is that, that there is no safe place, that they feel like there is no safe place. Because at the very least, like a gay bar, a gay club, like you would think, well, why would any straight person have a problem with this? I mean, we're in here on our own. Like we have segregated ourselves into this place where it's just us. Well, we're not bothering anybody. We're behind closed doors. And yet, even here, we're not safe. And that's a very troubling, upsetting thought. So I completely get the impulse, to want to take the offensive, or at the very least, to arm yourself to be better equipped for the defensive. Like I still maintain that more people having guns is not the answer to any problem, but I understand emotionally where you might be coming from if that's what you think. And you are completely right about the grooming thing. It is purely fictional. It's the same thing as trans people using the bathroom, and it's trans women are really men pretending to be women because they're predators and they want to get into the bathroom, and it's this whole invasion thing. Completely made up issue, not a problem in the real world. Grooming, completely made up issue, not a problem in the real world. You can see that when the people who are trying to raise hysteria about grooming, you listen to the kinds of things they are describing as being evidence of grooming, and it's just gay people existing. Like a gay person who is asked, by a child, like, are you gay? If you're a man, like, do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a husband? And if you answer honestly and say, yes, I'm gay, I have a husband, or I have a boyfriend, or whatever, these bigots consider that grooming. Because you are honest. You are honestly answering a question about your life asked by a child. And all you have said is, yes, I'm gay and that's my boyfriend. That's all you've said. But that's grooming to a lot of these people, or that's opening the door. That's, enticing young people into that lifestyle just by simply being open about who you are. So it's all horseshit. It's all completely made up. It's a moral panic, like everything that Republicans are concerned about for the most part is. It's a fucking made up moral panic. And, the bad part about it is that there are enough people to take it seriously that it can actually result in real harm. But it's complete horseshit. And you're right. If it was real, the news media would be all over it, would be jumping on the fact that you have not seen a single story about a young person actually being groomed and abused by a drag queen at, one of these drag queen story time places or whatever. The fact that that story does not exist, that has never happened, tells you all you need to know. Because if that kind of thing had happened, it would have been reported on by the news, because that's a salacious, lurid, shocking story. And as soon as they found one, they would have gone looking. And if there were any other ones, they would have found all of those too. And you would have heard about nothing else for months. And the fact that you haven't, to me, is suggestive of the fact that the problem doesn't exist. It's just like fucking child trafficking rings operating out of the basements of pizza parlors. It's made up horseshit. So, yeah. Some random geek who just got paid, but is also nearly tapped out too. As I'm writing this, I haven't heard your response to my last question, so that won't influence the list I finally put together of my favorite movies of all time as of right now. Here's the list: Star Wars, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Perfect Blue, Paprika, Summer Wars, Clue. Ooh, Dana will like that one. Your Name, A Silent Voice, the movie, The Princess Bride, Mad Max Fury Road, Ghost in the Shell, Blazing Saddles, The Last Jedi. Now to watch the Ask Away to see how close you were. I like this. Watches. Shit, I forgot Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli, so I added to the list Princess Mononoke and Grave of the Fireflies. I do love Akira. It is a great movie, but it is weird and not a favorite. I love a good samurai movie. I love Akira Kurosawa's work, but only seen a few. I love Seven Samurai, better than the Western remake, but not a favorite. The film is slow, and believe it or not, I haven't seen Yojimbo yet. Now, what do you think of my list and how close you were? Well, I guess I got a couple of them. I got Princess Mononoke, at least after you went back and added it. But no, I think it's a really good list. I haven't seen every movie on it, but of the ones I have seen, I agree with you that they're fantastic. I mean, Star Wars, obviously, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Mad Max Fury Road is such a good goddamn movie. Oh, such a good movie. And I mean, Blazing Saddles, classic. Princess Bride, classic. Ghost in the Shell was okay. I wasn't like Ghost in the Shell and Akira. I kind of view similarly. Like I see why people liked it. I have a certain admiration for elements of it, but it didn't like blow me away. Like with the first time I saw Grave of the Fireflies, I thought, oh my God, this is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. You know, like Grave of the Fireflies just knocked me over. And Ghost in the Shell, not so much. But like I said, I get why people, you know, sort of flocked to it and why people like it, but it's not really my thing. But yeah, I guess I was in the ballpark, I guess. Thank you for sharing. Matthew Gretzinger, could you ever in a million years be persuaded to reconsider your perspective on Lwaxana Troi? I've been revisiting TNG and DS9, and I find her later episodes, beginning with Half a Life and continuing steadily throughout the remainder of the show and into DS9, to be quite moving at times. Whatever your answer to the first question, I've watched many of your videos that cover this topic, and I wonder, why do you dislike her character so? I don't think I've ever heard you give a strong reason. Thanks for listening, and please keep up the great work. I mean, perspectives change as the years go on. You know, there have been movies that I have not liked, and then I've watched them again after many years and discovered that actually now I like them, you know? So I don't want to say that like my opinion on Lwaxana would never ever change. Of course, I could never say that. But I've been watching TNG since I was a kid, and I've seen most of those episodes many, many times. And same thing with Deep Space Nine. Like, I feel like I've been exposed to Lwaxana Troi enough to have formed a pretty stable opinion of her as a character. So I don't really see my opinion of the character changing. And I've seen and heard from lots of other people who do like the character and have explained to me why they do find the character appealing. And I think that's great, good for them. But that is most definitely not how I see the characters. I don't really see it changing. I will say, I think Half a Life is her best episode. I think it's really the only Lwaxana episode that I would say is like genuinely a good episode. So I'll give you that one, you know, but over, like, I don't think any of her Deep Space Nine appearances are any good at all. I don't think she's a good character. And what do I dislike about her character? I think when she's supposed to be funny, she's not funny. And when she is supposed to be tragic or sad or emotionally, you know, sort of moving in some way, I find her trite and maudlin. I don't think she's a very well-written character. And I don't think she's a very well-acted character. And I know that's a third rail to step on in the Star Trek community because Majel Barrett is this revered figure. But I don't think she acquits herself very well as an actress in that role. I'll put it that way. In the past, I have said I don't think she was a very good actress, and Perhaps that is too unkind. She has given good performances within the Star Trek franchise. I thought she was good as number one in The Cage. She's tolerable as Nurse Chapel in TOS, but I mean, Nurse Chapel is barely a character, so it's not like she's really called upon to do very much. But as Lwaxana, I think she is a terrible actress. She has awful comic timing. She is shrill and annoying, and not because the character is supposed to be that way. I understand that the character is supposed to be kind of, big and annoying, but she has what in pro wrestling it's called go away heat. All right? In pro wrestling, when a wrestler is a heel, a bad guy, you're supposed to boo the bad guy, right? You're supposed to boo the heel. You're supposed to not like the heel, but you're supposed to not like the heel in a way that makes you want to keep watching, because you want to see the heel get their comeuppance. You want to see the good guy beat the bad guy. If a heel ever starts to get a reaction from the fans where it's not that they're booing him because he's a bad guy and they want to see him get his ass kicked, they're booing him because they are tired of seeing him. That's go away heat. That's like, we don't want to see you. We don't even want to see you get your ass kicked. We don't want to see you at all. Go away. We're sick of you. That's my reaction to Lwaxana Troi. She has go away heat with me. I don't care if I'm supposed to feel sorry for her, or if I'm supposed to laugh at her, or if I'm supposed to be sympathizing with the other characters because they have to put up with her. I don't care. I'm tired of seeing her. She's an irritant. She's repellent. I'm probably going to skip this episode. That's where I'm at with her. And that's where I've been at with that character for many, many years. And like as a character within the fiction of the show, I think she's a horrible person. She's a horrible, horrible person. And the fact that more characters don't treat her as a really horrible, she reads people's minds without their consent, like all the time. She claims that pretty much every male character that she encounters wants to fuck her. And whether that's true or not, and I don't see how it could possibly be true, but whether that's true or not is beside the point. Like, she openly shares this information with everybody. She violates the privacy of almost every single character she encounters. And she treats her daughter like absolute garbage. She completely ignores all of Deanna's boundaries, all of Deanna's wishes. And yet we're still supposed to come to this place with the character where it's like, oh, but she's really good at heart and she loves her daughter and she just wants best. And she has a tragedy in her past and we should feel sorry for her for that. And I'm sorry. The character is not nearly entertaining enough, and the performance is not nearly good enough, and there is not nearly enough reward that I get as a viewer from that character for me to say, yeah, if you look at her like she's a real person, she's a huge piece of shit, but at least she's entertaining and whatever. Like, no. Go away heat is what she has with me. And again, things can change, but that's probably where I will be with the character, for good, because that's where I've been for a while. Sangel, hey there, Steve. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and thanks in general for another year of great content. Your thoughtfulness and creativity are appreciated. My question this week is about something you've already mentioned on your channel, but I don't remember the details, so I apologize if this is a repeated patron question. I remember you spoke about a final step you take in processing your videos. Was it some sort of up convert? What was the program that you use, and what was the reason for it? Does it have to do with the H.264 codec? Let me know if this rings a bell. Thanks again. Yeah, I call it upscaling. Technically, it's not upscaling because I'm not actually increasing the resolution of the video file. I'm still ending up with a 1080 HD video, not a 4K video or anything like that. So it's not technically upscaling, but I use a program called Topaz Video that is an AI upscaler or an AI enhancement program. And I've been using it for about a year. And what I do is it's the last step before I upload the video to YouTube. So I finish my video, it's all edited, it's done. I export it into an MP4 file, and then I take that finished MP4 file and I drop it into the Topaz AI enhancer, and it enhances the video. and what it does is it smooths out the picture. If there's any video noise like in the background because of low lighting, or artifacts that are there because of the compression of the video file, it gets rid of most of those. It smooths things out, it sharpens things up, it just makes it look better. And then of course when you upload it to YouTube, there's a drop in quality because of the way YouTube compresses files on its server. So you don't get the full quality of it when you watch the video on YouTube. Like there's a final step when you upload it to YouTube where you lose some quality. But I still think it looks a lot better, having gone through that process on YouTube, even though there is that loss of quality, than it would otherwise. So it's basically just like giving it a little bit of like a visual makeover before I upload it. So that's the last process. I usually refer to it as upscaling, although technically the way I use the program, it's not quite upscaling because it's the same resolution, but same idea, like AI enhancement. Dana, hi Steve. Recently you mentioned that Jason graciously permitted you to select the next movie that the two of you will discuss on the Late Seating podcast, which a new episode went up today, by the way. As I'm sure we all, actually, it might have gone up yesterday now that I'm thinking about it. But anyway, there's a new episode of Late Seating Up. As I'm sure we all know, Sherlock Jr. is your favorite movie of all time, ever, bar none. But you said that you went with The General, as it has been more influential, which is part of the rationale behind each choice for the podcast. So here's what I'm wondering. Which movie do you think is better, and what makes it a better movie? Excuse me. Also, if you think Sherlock Jr. is the better movie, why has The General had more influence on the industry? Or if you think The General is the better movie, what makes you like Sherlock Jr. better? These, of course, are both classic films starring and directed by or co-directed by Buster Keaton, one of the great stars in the history of the cinema, the greatest of the silent comedians, although I am also a huge fan and appreciator of Charlie Chaplin's work, unlike Jason, who is not a fan of Chaplin. I love Chaplin. But I love Keaton just a little bit more. And you're right, Sherlock Jr. is my favorite movie ever, period, end of story. I love Sherlock Jr. But when Jason gave me the opportunity to choose our next movie, and he said, choose any Buster Keaton movie, I wanted to say Sherlock Jr. because that is my favorite movie, and I do want to review that movie with Jason on Late Seating at some point. But I feel like, because we've never done a Buster Keaton movie before, and I felt like The General needs to be the first Buster Keaton movie that we do, because, like you said, because of its significance to the art form and to its status as Keaton's masterpiece in the minds of most people. If I am forced to choose, I think I would say that Sherlock Jr. is a better film. And I think I can defend Sherlock Jr. as a better film on the basis of things other than just my personal preference. Although honestly, it's a little silly because like it's all my personal preference. And the older I get, the more I realize that line between the best movie that I've ever seen and my favorite movie is often imaginary. Like there's really not, it's a distinction without a difference in most cases. And that may be the case here. When I say, well, Sherlock Jr. is my favorite movie, but maybe it's not the greatest movie. Like, what does that really mean? I'm expressing a preference. It's sort of like the difference between like a film and a movie, which you still tease me about sometimes, Dana. And like, that's a distinction that has long since ceased to be a meaningful one to me. Like, I call it a movie, call it a film. I don't care. It's all the same thing. But no, I think Sherlock Jr. is the better film. I think Sherlock Jr. is a movie that every time I watch it, it's magical to me. Like it has this wonderful dreamlike quality to it. It's so imaginative and so creative and so elegant and so imaginative, yet also so unpretentious, which is a very rare quality. And the jokes are great and it's funny and the gags are so clever and so tight and so well executed. It's a fantastic movie and a magical movie, and it's a joy to watch every single time I watch it. Having said that, why has the general been more influential? Why is the general more broadly considered to be a better film or a more important film or more representative of Keaton's genius? Uh, because it's bigger, and I think it's a more impressive film in the conventional sense. The general has all of those things that, except for the dreamlike quality and the sort of fantasy quality that Sherlock Jr. has. I mean, the general is more grounded in realism, at least as much as any Buster Keaton movie is. Um, but the general has all of the things that people celebrate typically when they are celebrating Buster Keaton as an artist. It has his fantastic comic performance, his timing, his subtlety as an actor. It has the stunts that he is known for. It has a lot of scope and scale, you know, and it is genuinely very funny. And it has the kind of story that allows you to not only enjoy the story, but also it's the same kind of story that a lot of other silent comedians did in their own way. So it provides you a good basis for comparison. So you can take the general and you can compare how Keaton handles certain elements in the general to how Chaplin handles certain elements in City Lights or Modern Times or The Kid, or, name your brilliant, great Chaplin movie, right? How Chaplin is more of a romantic and Keaton is more of a technophile and is more interested in being clean and quick and witty and sharp and unsentimental, whereas Chaplin was one of the most unabashedly sentimental filmmakers ever. So it provides a good basis for comparison, right? So I think that's another reason for it too. Like if you are Team Keaton, you can take the general and you can point out certain things and contrast them with things that people on Team Chaplin will say, and it will make the difference between the two artists very clear. So I think that's part of it too. But really, between the two of them, you can't make a wrong choice because they're both masterpieces. There's I happen to prefer Sherlock Jr., but The General is one of the greatest films ever made. And we're going to review it on Late Seating in 2 weeks, and I'm super excited for it. John Burns, hey, Steve, hydrate. Space exploration is going to be a little like, well, settling a country. Yeah, even those which have already been settled. And who makes money off of this? Bankers! They end up giving out loans to many people, hell, even billionaires. Some would say, especially billionaires. Loans are great when they're needed, but everyone realizes not all loans can be perfect. And yet, bankers still seem to have control about loans. Robberies aren't a concern for bankers because the money in banks are insured. So do you think the system is rigged for bankers? Any other thoughts? I mean, do I think the money lending system is rigged in favor of the people who control the money being lent? Yes, I think it might be. I think it might be. I don't know. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, yes, I do think the system is, if not rigged, at least strongly slanted in favor of the people who have the money to lend. and against the people who are needing the money, especially if they actually need the money. Because like you said, a lot of billionaires get loans for various reasons. I don't necessarily think they're being preyed upon, or if they are, it doesn't matter because they've got the money. But working class people, middle class people, people who take out a loan because they actually need the money for something, yeah, I don't think the system is oriented in their favor. And I think that's a shame. I think that sucks. I think it could be otherwise, and it should be. But yeah, of course the system is rigged for the bankers. Yeah, of course it is. And it probably will be on Mars too, unfortunately, especially if you know who gets there first. Shazy. Hi, Steve. Do you think that the reason why major social issues take so long to solve is because there is a majority of people that, while not actively malicious, like, say, Republicans, simply do not care about such issues until it personally impacts them? I'm talking about people who don't even go through the trouble of voting, saying that it's all rigged, nothing I can do, etc. Conveniently, they are often the recipients of privilege and seem tone deaf to the issues impacting people worse off than they are. How many times do we as a species need to collectively allow shit to hit the fan before we learn that prevention is worth a pound of cure? Sorry, I just needed to rant and get this off my chest. Thanks. Well, I know you're welcome, and I agree with you. I think it is a mark of privilege. And I think it's also a privilege that people grant to themselves. I think when you tell yourself, for whatever reason, that you are justified in not voting or in not participating in the political process, because for whatever reason you've convinced yourself that it doesn't make a difference anyway, I think you have granted yourself a privilege. You have told yourself, I don't need to do anything about this. I don't need to be involved in this because whatever I do won't make a difference anyway, so I don't need to worry about it. So you are giving yourself permission to not take your share of responsibility as a citizen. And I just think that's a bad thing to do. I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's a negative thing for everybody if people do that. But people do it. And you're right. They tend to do it until a given issue affects them personally. And then often they change their minds. And that is a shame. And I agree with you that that is one of the major reasons why it takes so damn long to fix things. Not because of the people who are actively opposed to the reform, although they are the most visible problem and they can't be ignored. But yeah, it's the apathetic people. It's the people who just don't care. I feel like those are the people that I get the most frustrated with whenever gun violence becomes an issue, because as anybody who's watched my channel for a long time is like, that is the issue in the United States that makes me the most hopeless the most often. Whenever, and again, we've just experienced this, there's some terrible mass shooting, and it's probably been committed by someone who was radicalized through some kind of online group, or has shitty attitudes toward women, or shitty attitudes toward gay people, or shitty attitudes toward Jews or black people, or LGBTQ people, or name your marginalized group. It's some white dude, most likely, that has shitty attitudes about marginalized people, and they have an AR-15, which in most cases they got legally, or if didn't get it legally, had access to it in some way. And they carry out this shooting, and we all are aghast and sad and angry about it for a few days, and then nothing happens. And this has repeated itself again and again and again and again and again for decades. And the NRA is a big part of that, and lobbying groups that are suicidally pro-firearm and are firearm fetishists are a big problem and are a big part of that. And those groups do absolutely need to be opposed and need to be defeated. But the reason why they are able to wield such influence in our culture and in our political system is because there is this mass of people who just don't seem to care. And whether it's because they just honestly don't care, or because they feel like whatever they would do wouldn't make a difference, it's kind of the same thing at this point. It's apathy that is enabling the problem to continue. And yeah, so I agree with you about that, and about that gun issue, and specifically, and social problems in general. There's a large number of people who, for whatever reason, are disengaged from the problem, from the system, from any of the mechanisms that, if properly wielded, could address the problem. And that in and of itself is a huge problem. I feel like things would be, it wouldn't solve everything, of course, but things would be a lot better if more people were thoughtfully engaged with trying to solve these problems, as opposed to just ignoring it and going about their everyday lives. Russell, hey, Steve, happy belated Thanksgiving. Before I get to my question, regardless how you may feel about him in person, I want to give a shout out to the late Jason David Frank and Gregory Eatson. JDF was known as an original Power Ranger, and Gregory Eatson was best known for his role on 24, and I enjoyed watching both of them on screen. RIP to both. So now on to my question. I think I'm just going to continue with the Sorensen era for a moment, and we're in NYPD Blue, everybody who isn't hip to this. The Sorensen era for a moment and comment on Fancy leaving, as he was one of my favorite characters on the show. I love the dynamic between him and Sipowicz. Everything from the first season when Andy is like, "You guys make me laugh," to the rib dinner, to the quasi scenes, even the situations regarding Szymanski, the racist cop who pulled Fancy over, to Fancy leaving. What was some of your favorite Fancy moments? Hope to see you, and as always, a pleasure to talk about one of my favorite shows with you. Yeah, I mean, Fancy leaving was a turning point in the show too. Fancy leaving, I think, was another instance of the show losing something that had been important to it up to that point. And the show continued on for years after that. And the show did not, all of a sudden start to suck. It continued on and was still, for the most part, a decent show, if nothing else. But Fancy leaving was a blow, was a turning point because of the dynamic with him and Sipowicz. I mean, obviously the locker room fight between the two of them was a high point of the series, where the tension between Sipowicz and Fancy finally comes to blows. I remember an episode. I wish I could remember the title. I can never remember the title, but I've watched it multiple times. It's one of my favorite episodes. It's when there's a group of white supremacists, I don't know if they're organized white supremacists, but it's a group of racist white guys. And one of them gets thrown off a roof. And the crime is related to how racist these guys are. I can't remember if it's a black guy who throws one of the racist white people off a roof, or if it's something to do with, the guy who gets murdered was a racist white guy, and he got murdered because he was a racist white guy. And one of his racist white guy friends is like in the room, and Fancy takes it upon himself to conduct the interrogation, which is really unusual because Fancy is the lieutenant, and usually one of the detectives or two of the detectives does the interrogation. But Fancy goes in on his own, and there's just this incredible scene between him and this guy, this fucking scumbag, this racist white dude. And Fancy, I'm not going to use the language that he used, because Fancy says the N-word a couple of times, but he tells, he's saying to this white dude, he's like, it must be tough being you. Like, I really sympathize with you, because, you try to do good, you try to get on with life, you try to walk the straight and narrow, but it just doesn't work, does it? Because your N-word problems just keep coming up, don't they? And, it's just an amazing scene, because Fancy is angry and bitter and has every right to be. And, he's facing off with this fucking piece of shit. And it's a great scene. There's so much tension and so much anger in the scene. And it's an example of how NYPD Blue could really just be an absolutely electric show when it was firing on all cylinders. So that would be one of my favorite Fancy scenes too. And then of course when Fancy leaves and Andy finally sort of says goodbye to him, and Fancy sort of intervenes and gets the mean Denise Crosby lieutenant transferred away, so that the nice Isai Morales lieutenant can come in instead. And he says, Andy says to Fancy, it wouldn't be the first time you did us a solid. Like he knows that Fancy is the one who intervened and got the transfer change. And he says, I just wanted to thank you and tell you that it wasn't the first time that you did us a solid. And it's sort of a show of respect between the two of them right as Fancy is leaving. I thought that was nice. So yeah, Fancy, fantastic character. And finally, Joe McClory. Happy Thanksgiving, Steve, and all the viewers out there. Light one this week. Could you give a quick instruction and recipe for a good vegetarian dish you make? I think my favorite that I've made on multiple occasions that qualifies as like actually cooking instead of just heating stuff up, or, mixing and matching prepackaged stuff. I think I've nailed down a pretty good black bean burger recipe. So, um, I and you can make it in different quantities. I usually make it with 2 cans of black beans, and it lasts for a while. It lasts for a few days. Um, but 2 cans of black beans, drained, rinsed, you know, put them in a bowl, mash them up. I have like a hand potato masher, but I guess you could use a food processor or something if you want to chop them up. But I mash them up roughly so that they're kind of a mush, but there's still some whole beans and half beans in there to give it some texture. Add some panko breadcrumbs. Most recipes that I've looked at for that amount of beans say a cup to a cup and a half of panko, but really I just kind of eyeball it and mix it around until it gets the texture that I want. And you can use other kinds of breadcrumbs too, but I like panko because I feel like that you wind up with a more hamburger like texture when it's done. Stir in, I beat an egg. And again, this is vegetarian, not vegan. So I beat an egg and put an egg in to mix with the breadcrumbs to be kind of a binder. I usually do half of an onion or sometimes a red onion to give it some color. Very finely chopped red onion, half of a red onion, put that in for flavor. Some steak seasoning or hamburger seasoning, whatever your favorite, like mixed, like Montreal steak seasoning or something. Put some of that in. Again, like a teaspoon or a couple of teaspoons, or just to taste. Salt and pepper, some brown mustard, some either Worcestershire sauce or A1 sauce or something like that to give it a little bit of like a steaky or beefy kind of flavor to it and aroma, and mix that all up, and continuing to add breadcrumbs to give it, kind of a hamburgery texture. And so that when you make it into a patty, it actually stays together. And then make it into patties, into hamburger patties. And I find that I get the best results if I do all of this ahead of time and make it into hamburger patties, and then put the patties, on a plate or like a cookie sheet, in layers, if necessary, separated like with wax paper so they don't mush together, and then put it in the freezer for at least a few hours, or ideally overnight. Like make this all the day before you want to eat it, and put it in the freezer. And then when it's in the freezer, it'll help it. It'll get nice and cold, and they'll stay together better when you cook them. Because with every homemade black bean burger I've ever made, even these ones that I think I've gotten to the point where I can make them really good, you always run the risk of when you're actually cooking it, when you're frying it, it can fall apart. They don't hang together as well as as actual hamburger does. And a lot of that is also like how big you make it and what the shape is. If you make them a little thicker, they hang together a little better. If you try to make it too thin, sometimes they'll fall apart at the edges. But anyway, make them however you want to make them. Stash them in the fridge overnight, and then you just, fry them up in a frying pan or a grill pan or whatever, like you would do a hamburger. And I usually take a slice of cheese, I like Swiss cheese on my burgers. So I take a slice of Swiss cheese and put over it when it's almost done, so it melts in the pan with the burger, and you just cook it until both sides are nice and brown and crisp, and it's hot all the way through, and there's your bean burger. I eat it on either a Kaiser roll or sometimes a brioche hamburger roll, that I have drizzled with olive oil and put that in the pan to brown it on both halves, and some mustard or some mayonnaise on for a condiment, some mixed like spring greens for lettuce, for greens, maybe a slice or two of raw red onion. Just how I like my burgers, But yeah, that's my black bean. But now that I've gone through the whole process and described it, I kind of want to make them now. And I don't think I have any black beans. I'm going to have to go to the grocery store and get supplies to make black bean burgers now that I've talked through that, because they are one of my favorite recipes. They're really good. They're really good. Okay. That is it for the patron questions. And I am going to turn my full attention to the chat. But before I do that, I have a surprise. I have a surprise for everybody. This is a special surprise. And actually, I'm going to try to make this a regular thing on Ask Away, at least for the next several episodes. Yesterday, as you know, was the Stuffy and Friends Turkey Day episode. It was the return of Stuffy and Jack McPherson to the channel, and I was very happy to bring them back. And I've mentioned a couple times, I've also written some Stuffy and Friends shorts, and these are YouTube shorts, so they're only like a minute long max. So they're like super, super short. But I've written several of them, and I've actually finally gotten around to shooting some. I see Dana going, oh, that must be for the red onion. That's for the raw red onion. Dana doesn't like onions. So I would just leave them off of yours. That's fine. And I would not include them in the mix for you. How about that? But anyway, so I have produced a few Stuffy and Friends shorts, minute-long shorts for YouTube, and I will be releasing them over the next few weeks. One of them will go up on the channel tomorrow at noon Eastern tomorrow, but I'm going to debut that Stuffy short right here on this stream tonight. In fact, in just a few minutes, in just a few seconds, really, probably not even a few minutes. And because this is not a YouTube short, this is a live stream, I'm going to give you the full screen version. The shorts that will be released as shorts separately on my channel will be in a square aspect ratio, because YouTube shorts have to be either vertical or square. So the Stuffy shorts will all be in a square aspect ratio. But the version that you are about to watch right here on this channel, on this live stream, will be in full frame, in 16 by 9 aspect ratio. So you'll see what I mean when you watch it. But anyway, this is technically it's the second one, because I did one a few weeks ago in response to a question. I did the Stuffy version of the "This is fine" meme. But this is a totally new one, a totally original one, and I'm going to play it for you right now. And then I will come back and we can talk about it, and I can spend the rest of the time in the chat. So here we go. The debut of a brand new Stuffy and Friends short.
God damn it.
What?
I just realized something.
That our society is inevitably headed toward either fundamental reform or catastrophic collapse because it's unsustainable in its present form?
No, a Wendy's Frosty is just chocolate soft serve ice cream.
What?
All these years they've been marketing it like it's some unique special thing, but it's just a cup of soft serve ice cream.
But you like soft serve ice cream, so why does it matter what they call it?
It's the principle of the thing, Stuffy.
What principle would that be?
Wait, what are the options?
Okay, that's it. Hope you liked it. I think that one turned out pretty good. And I have two more that are completely done, that are in the pipeline, although I want to shoot some more before I release the other ones I have, because I want to have some in different locations in the house. And all of the ones I have done right now are set in the dining room, like that one you just saw was. But yeah, so some more Stuffy shorts coming up. And I would like to, like I said, for the next little while at least, I would like to have one to show you for every Ask Away stream. So we'll try to make that a regular or semi-regular thing. So anyway, I have some super chats that are piling up here. Let me take a look at these. Here's a couple from Kirok 2011. Hey, Steve, yes, the episode you mentioned was about a racist father and son who got thrown off the roof. And Fancy is like you, being distracted only prevents us from getting those names. But your son getting distracted got him thrown off a roof. Gee, I wish my dad didn't teach me the N-word, because now it's got me killed. Yes, that's exactly the scene I was thinking of. Absolutely. And thank you for the super chat. Here's Sinister Intelligence says, going to a gay bar for my B-day tomorrow. I'm packing pepper spray for protection. Here is the Star Trek version of All I Want for Christmas Is You. Yes, I think pepper spray is a good idea. And I hope you have a good time for your birthday, and happy 30th once again. Thank you, some random geek. 255 AD says, how would you feel about using a slur like the N-word if you were acting in a period piece set in an era where that was normal for white people? I think that would probably be the only remotely acceptable circumstance in which a white person could say the word. And if it's me personally, like, I would have to really believe in the project. Like, I would not want to say the N-word as a character in a show if it was something that I felt was frivolous, you know. I would want it. I would want it to be meaningful, and to know that my character was part of a story that was meaningful and was doing something worthwhile. So I feel like that's. But I mean, I still would not be super comfortable with it. But I might, if I were an actor and I believed in the work, I think I would be willing to do it. Dana, you like the way my voice cracks? So it's the principle, Stuffy. Jacob Monroe, yes, I do like Frosties. I like Frosties very much. I mean, they're just soft. It's just a giant. It's a big old cup of soft serve ice cream. How can you not like Frosties? 255 AD says for every probe or scientific satellite, Cape Canaveral will have to send up like a dozen military satellites. If you were one of the engineers there, how would you feel about that ethical trade-off? I mean, I wouldn't be thrilled about it. I wouldn't be happy about it. I mean, and I might say, why can't the military launch their own goddamn satellites? Why do they have to use our fucking launch pad? 255 AD says, why did you opt to react to only to videos about cooking or food production this year? That was just the theme I chose. I don't always choose a theme. The last few years with the Turkey Day videos, we have riffed multiple videos, and I think it's fun to choose a theme to kind of unite them. So, there's that. But, and because, Thanksgiving and food. So, that was the main thing. But there wasn't anything super meaningful behind it. It was just, it's Thanksgiving, it's Turkey Day, it's a food-based holiday. So let me see if I can find some, public domain short films from the old days about food related stuff that I think would be good for that format. And I did. So that's why I did it that way. Brian Neil Singleton says, Steve, loved your critical analysis of Picard season 2, on point and precise. The Q angle was cool. It just didn't pay off. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, the idea of the very general idea of Q in season 2 of Picard is fine. And the basic concept of let's bring back Q, and even the idea of let's have Q's story be that he's dying and he wants to do like one last thing for Picard or something like that's, you could do something with that, they just didn't. Like they just didn't. So, there's that. But yeah, sure. Oh, some random geek. Absolutely. Can you imagine there are some white actors that would go, yes, I finally get to say the N-word for this scene? For sure. Oh, for sure. And that would be part of the perception that I would want to try and dispel. Like, I wouldn't want people, if I were playing a character in a project where my character said the N-word, I would not want people to see that project and think, oh, I bet it felt good for him because he finally got to say the N-word. I would want it to be a character and a line that was important enough that people would watch it and they would say, okay, I see why that was written that way. You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't just be like, hey, it's just like when, hey, technically it's a play, so we can smoke because you're allowed to smoke indoors if it's a theatrical production. Like, no, I don't want to. You don't want to say like, I'm allowed to say the N-word on a technicality because it's a show. Like, I wouldn't want to do that, and I wouldn't want people to think that I had done that. Oh, Dana, your ugh was because you wrote something in a previous comment and closed with a smiley and it ate your word. Well, I'm very sorry, but I also happen to know that you don't like onions. So I stand by what I said. 2-5 AD says, are Batman's villains really insane, though? The Joker seems relatively lucid in most depictions I've seen. He's just an amoral person. Well, I think, yeah, I mean, it depends on how you define insane and what characterization of the Joker you're talking about. I guess you can be lucid and still have a serious mental illness. You know what I mean? Like, having a mental illness doesn't necessarily rob you of your in the moment lucidity. And Keurig 2011 had a super chat that says, where did you come up with the voice for Stuffy? I just sort of, like, I looked at him and that's just the voice that came out. Like the voices of all the animals are just sort of the voices that came out of them, that came out of me when I thought about them. You know, they're the voices of all the Stuffy characters are very intuitive, you know, and I think that's part of why they're fun for me to play, and that's part of why they work as characters. That's just sort of that's what I didn't overthink it, you know. That's just what they sound like, you know. Some random geek, I'm watching Metropolis 1927 in a Discord with friends. Are you jealous of me? No, but I'm happy for you. I mean, Metropolis is a fantastic movie, like a fantastic movie. So I'm glad that you're watching it, but I'm not jealous because I mean I could watch it. As soon as this stream's over, I could go watch it if I wanted. But I'm probably going to watch wrestling instead. Oh, and all mod cons, thank you very much for the super chat there, by the way. Sinister Intelligence says, what's your opinion on Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You? It's grown on me. I mean, I don't hate it. But then again, I think the reason why people sort of turned against it was because it's so heavily played this time of year and people just get sick of it. I haven't usually been in situations where I've had to hear it, you know? So I haven't gotten sick of it. Like it's not my favorite Mariah Carey song. I don't think it's like a great song, but I don't have a huge problem with it. It's not like if I were out somewhere and I heard it come on, it's not like I would go, oh my God, why? Like it's fine. You know, it's fine. Ooh, Dana just added black beans to your grocery list. Will you be making black bean burgers? Or will you be using them in some other application? It's nice. Black beans are a good thing to have just in the cupboard, I think, because you can use them in many different ways. I don't always make burgers with them. Sometimes I'll add them to rice, and you have black beans and rice. That can be good. Or they're good for like a side dish. If you need a side dish for something, add a little seasoning to them, and you can plate them next to whatever your main course is, like, or put them in a salad. There's all kinds of uses for black beans. They're a very versatile food. 2 to 5 AD. By the way you said Worcestershire is wrong. When Americans say Shire, they always give it a hard I when it actually has more of a soft E sound. Well, I mean, I've heard people call it Worcester sauce. So I feel like there's some flexibility on the pronunciation there. And there's a lot of regional dialect involved as well. Some random geek, I see the Captain Kirk photo on your dresser, but I'm still cat. Yes, that's it. That's it's from The Enemy Within, where it's, the transporter splits him into good Kirk and bad Kirk. And yeah, he sees or he hears the good Kirk give the announcement over the public address system on the Enterprise, and he hears the other Kirk speaking as the captain, and he gets all mad. And he goes, I'm Captain Kirk! Oh, Maximum Shatner. Yeah, that's it. That's that moment. Ooh, Dana, that sounds delicious. Simon Denham Ellis. Hey, from across the pond in Wales. Always enjoy your Star Trek studies. Always look forward to that time of the month. Well, thank you very much. There's another Star Trek video coming out next week. I wrote it yesterday and shot it today, and we'll be editing it over the weekend. But yeah, it'll be out hopefully on Wednesday. About the Klingons of classic Trek. I'm very pleased with how it's come out so far. So I hope you like that one when it comes out. Ooh, Michael, I add black beans to ground beef when I make tacos to make it more filling but healthier. That's a good idea too. Hi, Elijah. Jacob Monroe, do you like how MJF became champion? Yes. Full disclosure, I did not watch the match. I did not buy the pay-per-view. But in terms of the booking and Regal turning on Mox to make MJF the champion, I think that was probably about as good as they could have done it. I think that was the best way they could have gone. I felt like that program had kind of run out of gas by the time they got to the pay-per-view. I really didn't get the whole, Stokely and the firm turning on MJF but continuing to attack Mox, and then MJF making the babyface turn, and like I felt like that, it felt like they were sort of getting lost in the weeds with a lot of that. But the actual booking, I'm glad MJF won. I feel like that was really the only thing they could have done. MJF had to win the title, and I think they did it in a way that made sense. And I think Regal turning heel and handing him the brass knucks was great. And I thought Regal's promo on Dynamite to open the show this week was fantastic, and it was so nice to see heel Regal, because it's been a long time since we've seen like heel William Regal, where he's cutting the promo and then the fans start chanting "Fuck you, Regal," and he just takes a moment and looks at them and shakes his head and goes, "So uncouth." Like that was like, oh, heel Regal, I've missed you. So yeah, I thought, and like I said, I haven't seen the match. I don't know how it went as far as like a piece of wrestling, but in terms of the booking and the storytelling, I thought that was definitely a good way to go. Random Geek, yes, the patron and member hangout is this Sunday. Brian O'Neill Singleton says, aside from Picard Day, why aren't there any holidays in the 24th and 25th century? Well, there probably are. We just don't see them on the show. I would expect that, at least on Earth, I would expect most of the traditional, cultural or religious holidays are still celebrated by people. It's just, we don't see it in the show because, we don't see it in the show. Oh, I did forget to put the live chat on the screen, Geek. I totally forgot. Thank you. So for the last half hour of the show, there's the live chat on the screen. Thank you for mentioning that. Dana, I have not gotten my flu shot. No, I got my COVID booster, but I have not gotten my flu shot. So I should probably do that. Simon, from what I've seen of it, I like Doctor Who. I have not seen a ton of it. I watched the first season of its return with Christopher Eccleston as the Doctor, and then I'm still partway through David Tennant's first season, and I kind of stopped. Not because I didn't like it, I just kind of started watching something else and never came back to it. So I haven't seen that much of it, but what I've seen has been entertaining. I've liked it, Kirak 2011 says, did you see the latest Quantum Leap episode, and now are you hopeful? I am more hopeful because of the Halloween show, but the most recent episode I thought was still good. I do think the show is still moving in a good direction. I thought the last episode before the mid-season break was also a good one, but I still think the Halloween show is by far the best episode they've done so far. There's a couple other ones. Oh, Carlisle the Cinephile with the super chat says, you said you liked Invincible, right? Have you read the comics at all? And if so, are there any storylines or characters you hope to see in season 2? I have not read the comics. No, I've only seen the show, and I liked the show. I did think it was good. And I'm looking when season 2 comes out, I will certainly watch it. But no, I haven't read the comics. 255 AD says, is that vid going to be about how Enterprise coming up with a retcon for them not having ridges was entirely unnecessary fan service? No, it's just about the classic Trek episodes. But I mean, that is my opinion. That is exactly how I feel about that Enterprise episode. I feel like it was like I've said it before. It was 2 episodes of the show's final season that they spent coming up with a tortured explanation for something that needed no explanation. They did not need to spend 2 episodes of the final season of their show explaining why the Klingons in classic Trek don't have forehead ridges when we all know the reason. They could have just left it alone. And they were like, no, we are going to explain this. So, okay. I know some people really like those episodes, but I watched them a few months ago just to make sure that I wasn't forgetting anything and that they weren't actually great episodes. And they're just kind of fine. Like, they're not bad. It's not like, oh, Jesus, what a pair of terrible episodes, but it's like it's okay. I mean, did we really need this? No, we didn't. That's the answer. We didn't need this. Ian McNair says, I figured the work with the firm was to elevate them quickly and to create some expectation of Ethan Page winning the #1 tournament. Now you've got an upper mid heel group and given Ethan some juice. I mean, maybe that was the attempt. I really don't think that worked. I think whatever heat Ethan got in the last few weeks, and I really don't think it was much. And I like Ethan Page. I just don't think he's been used very well. I don't think it had anything to do with his involvement in the firm. In fact, one of the things that I really didn't like about the firm was they had Stokely come out with them right after they formed, and they had Stokely come out with all of them except for MJF, and he explained the deal. You know, we're the firm, we're the stable that's on retainer, and whenever MJF needs us, we'll be there. And of course, they broke up right after that, and that all wound up going absolutely nowhere. But whatever. And they gave him time on TV to do the introduction promo where he introduced everybody and he explained who they were and what their goal was. And at the time, I thought that was great because that's something that AEW has historically been really fucking bad at. They're terrible at introducing new people and at explaining who people are and what they want and just giving fans just like a starting point, just like something to hang on to say, okay, why should I give any semblance of a shit about this guy? So I thought that promo was good. I wish they did things like that more often, where a guy would just come out and say, here's who I am, here's my beef, here's who I'm mad at, here's what I want, right? Especially when they first show up. So that was cool. And Stokely went from down the line to each guy in the stable. He mentioned that, Lee Moriarty wanted to go after the Ring of Honor Pure title, and Ethan Page wanted to win the All-Atlantic Championship, right? And the Gun Club wanted to go after the Ring of Honor tag team titles, and then none of them did any of that, except possibly you could make an argument that because the Guns did kind of tease FTR, but that didn't really go anywhere because FTR are never on TV either. So, and like Ethan Page never did anything after that related to the All-Atlantic title. Lee Moriarty never did anything to try and win the ROH Pure title. None of the things that were set up in the promo went anywhere. It's like they all just started doing completely different stuff after that. So what was the point? Let me go down some of these that I've missed while I was ranting about AEW. Homebody says the Christmas lab party is mentioned in TOS, the mind control machine episode, wasn't it? And there is it Charlie X? They mentioned Thanksgiving. So, I mean, there seem to be holidays on Earth. We just don't really see them celebrating them, on the Starship. Dana says, so do you think the imaginative, dreamy feel you like in Sherlock Jr. makes it stand out more from the rest of his work, but also in the same way that makes it less representative? Yeah, I mean, the thing about Sherlock Jr. compared to Keaton's work after that, because all of Keaton's work before Sherlock Jr. was two-reelers, which are shorts. They're like between 20 and 30 minutes long, right? Sherlock Jr. was sort of a bridge between a two-reeler and a feature. So Sherlock Jr. is about 50 minutes long. So not a feature by today's standards, but longer than a two-reel short. And because of that, it still has a lot of the feel of a Buster Keaton short. And after Sherlock Jr., he went exclusively into making features. And because the features are not just about delivering gags, they're about telling stories in addition to delivering gags and making you laugh, they don't have the same dreamlike quality that Sherlock Jr. has. So it's not representative of his feature work. It is of a piece of his two-reeler work that came before. It's much more in that vein than it is in the vein of things like The General. So yeah, and I do think that makes it less representative of his feature work. Yeah. I want to catch up on some of these super chats I've missed here. John Burns says, please cheer on Canada on Sunday at the World Cup. Well, I am not watching any of the World Cup, but I will cheer on Canada in spirit. Go Canada. Kirak 2011 says, now I'm scared to ask, what are your thoughts of the TNG pilot encounter at Farpoint? I still think it's not as bad as people think, although part 2, Emissary, is still my favorite. You exist here. Yo, what a great line. I think Encounter at Farpoint is rotten. Like, I'm sorry. If you like it, that's great. Like, you have every right to like it. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. I think it's rotten. I think it's the worst Star Trek pilot. And I don't really think it has much competition in that. Like, I think Encounter at Farpoint is absolutely fucking rotten. But again, to each their own. If you like it, that's great. More power to you. 255 AD. Imagine if they did a 2-part about why the Enterprise had CRT monitors instead of LCD. Yes, exactly. It's exactly that kind of thing. That is a brilliant comparison. Yes, exactly. Imagine if they took 2 episodes of their show to explain why the ship of the future had CRT monitors instead of LCD monitors. Like, does anybody care? We know the answer. We don't need explanations of this shit. Please, just make the show. Yes, Dane, I did answer your question about Sherlock Jr. I answered it. God damn it. All mod cons says, well, hang on. First of all, Brian O'Neill Singleton deathmatch: Jem'Hadar versus Hirogen versus Predator. Jem'Hadar. Anyway, All Mod Con says, can you please tell us what Jack McPherson thinks of idiot Herschel Walker? I'm dying to know his opinion, seeing as how he used to be Vice President of the United States. I hope Jack won't mind me doing an impression of him, but no, Herschel, Herschel Walker is not someone that Jack is terribly fond of. Ever since the Obama presidency ended, Jack has, and of course, since after Jack's own service in government came to an end very early in the Trump administration, Jack has not been quite as engaged in politics as he once was. But no, he is not a fan of Herschel Walker. Not at all. He's not a fan of Herschel Walker. If the people of Georgia elect that twit to the Senate, they deserve whatever they get. You know, that kind of thing. Yes, Jonathan, yes. The Enterprise in TOS Thanksgiving, they had synthetic meatloaf shaped like turkey at Captain Kirk's request. Jacob Monroe, the super chat. I'm still not sold on the point of the all-Atlantic belt. What do you think? I agree. I think the all-Atlantic belt is a really nice looking belt. Like, I love a nice looking wrestling championship belt. I think it's a beautiful belt, but the title itself makes no sense and is not needed. And AEW has way too many championships already. So no, I don't think there is a point of the all-Atlantic belt, and I don't think they should have it. And I like Orange Cassidy, and it's nice that Orange Cassidy has a belt, but he has a pointless belt that shouldn't even exist. You know, so I think they should get rid of it. Kane 20C says, deathmatch time. Whose version of Spider-Man would win? Tom Holland's, Tobey Maguire's, or Andrew Garfield's? Well, if I'm writing it, Tobey Maguire's. But if it were to take place right now, Tom Holland's, because Tom is the current MCU Spider-Man. And that is as it should be. Super chat from Sinister Intelligence. I believe that during December and Christmas time, that Human Abomination will be playing in Garrick's shop on DS9. Mariah Carey Abomination will be playing in Garrick's shop on DS9. That would be funny. If there's like Mariah Carey music playing like on the promenade on Deep Space Nine, and all the aliens are like, what is this? God, every year. Oh, thank you, Dana. Well, I'm glad that I answered it, and I'm glad you got to see the answer. Kirak 2011 says, well, at least we both enjoy The Emissary. So there's that. What a beautiful opening and ending, and even love that he shakes Picard's hand at the end. Yeah, Emissary is maybe the best Star Trek pilot. Like, we definitely agree that Emissary is a great episode, especially for a pilot. Michael Handeline says, how did you feel about them wedging Okana into Star Trek Prodigy for 2 episodes? I was personally relieved when he fucked off. I mean, I can always do without that kind of fan service. Like, I mean, I think it's always probably better just to not do it. But I think, given that being the case, I think Okana's appearances in Prodigy were actually handled fairly well. It was done in a way so that it wasn't intrusive. It didn't seem like a, hey, look who it is kind of thing. His role in the show made sense. He had his character fit in those episodes in a way that made sense, even if you had no idea who he was and you had no idea that he had ever been in another episode of Star Trek like 30 years before. And, you know, most kids in the target audience of the show probably don't know that he was a character for an episode of TNG, you know? So I think they handled that about as well as they can handle something like that. And it really didn't bother me. I was worried about it when I saw the preview and I was like, oh, Jesus, here they go. It's going to be like a Lower Decks thing where fucking, oh, look, it's Sonia Gomez. Look, everybody. But it wasn't like that, you know? So I thought they handled it about as well as they could have. And I was pleasantly surprised. But at the same time, I was also glad to see him go. And I think they handled if that is his exit and he doesn't come back, I think they handled that really well too. In a way that was true to the character as established back on the TNG episode, and that was true to the character that he had shown himself to be in Prodigy, which is the most important thing. So I thought they handled it about as well as it could have been handled. But as a rule, I still think those sorts of things should be avoided completely. Homebody, what about all the crazy anti-Semitism wave? Ye and Fuentes. Seems like things are getting more and more wackadoo. Yeah, well, I mean, anti-Semitism is one of those things that it's like every time there's a flare-up, you know, every time there's an incident of a famous person saying something anti-Semitic, that should serve as a reminder to all of us that it is an ongoing problem. You know, that it never went away and it never goes away. You know, like I've said before, there's a reason that anti-Semitism is sometimes called the mother hate, because it goes back millennia. It is a malignancy that has infected multiple cultures around the world for centuries and centuries. And there are always people who are hateful and ignorant and looking to cast suspicion and you know, impose intolerance on Jewish people. It's unfortunately it's something that has been a part of humanity for a long time, and we can't ever pretend that it's not. You know, so when someone like Kanye West says a bunch of anti-Semitic shit, I mean, of course we need to be upset and shocked and say, shut that motherfucker up. You know, like, don't just let him say that. And especially don't let him say that unchallenged. But at the same time, like, we shouldn't be surprised. You know, it's always with us. It's a toxin that is always there that we always need to guard against. Dana asks, do you think Lwaxana could be written in a way that made you enjoy the character? If so, what would that require? Well, the time that I have enjoyed the character, which is the TNG episode Half a Life, she was written to not be incredibly annoying every time she was on screen. Her role in the episode was not primarily to make other characters miserable and then to demand their sympathy. She mostly acted like a human being, and she still had some Lwaxana moments. You know, she was still like, you know, sort of domineering and egocentric, and, you know, things that kind of are part of the character, but she also behaved like a human being, and she had a sympathetic story arc, in the episode that was not built around trying to make us pity her or feel bad for her because of some dark secret she has, or because deep down inside she's really insecure and she hates the thought of being thought of as ordinary, and all this like maudlin horseshit that they try to put on her to make you like her and be on her side. So just stuff like that. Just write her like a fucking human being. And if you want, if you're writing a scene with her that is meant to be funny, that is meant to make the audience laugh, then make her funny. Which is something that they rarely ever did. But yeah, I guess it's possible, sure. Big Box says, have you noticed in Voyage Home, Chekhov finds the Enterprise in Frisco, but that ship was named because of the Trek show, which means Trek the show in the actual Trek universe. No, the Enterprise that they find was not named because of the show, was it? That was the Enterprise they find in San Francisco was the nuclear aircraft carrier, which I think was already called the Enterprise, wasn't it? The ship that was the Enterprise that was named for the show was the Space Shuttle Enterprise. And I love that. I love that contradiction. I love that paradox. I love shit like that because they acknowledge that in the show. The Space Shuttle Enterprise exists in the Star Trek universe. And the Space Shuttle Enterprise was called the Enterprise because of Star Trek. So that's a paradox. And I love that. I love that. John Burns, Cincinnati, when the turkeys fell. Yes. The Tamarians would certainly say it that way. Cincinnati, when the turkeys fell. And also John Burns, this just in, white man tells black man to shut up. John. Non-anti-Semite tells anti-Semite to shut up. Brian O'Neill Singleton. Hi, I'm Wesley, and I'm a traveler. We watch. Shut up, Wesley. I mean, that's a good joke and everything, but I mean, if they wanted to have Wesley in the show, and again, I feel like those kinds of cameos are always a bad idea. But if they wanted to have Wesley show up for like one scene in season 2 of Picard, and they didn't want him to actually be a character, just have him pop in for one scene, would it have killed them to have it be a scene with Picard? Or with any character that Wesley knew? With any character that would understand the significance of seeing Wesley? Like, what is the point of having Wesley just walk up on someone who has no idea who the fuck he is? It boggles my mind, the decisions that some of these writers made that actually made it into the show. Like, did nobody say, why are we doing a Wesley scene where he's talking to someone who has no idea who the fuck he is? 285 AD says, when adapting really old sci-fi books, should you do the aesthetic of modern tech, or should you try to create what the author would have imagined? I mean, I think that's a personal choice. I think it depends on what you as the person doing the adaptation want to accomplish. Like, I have always thought it would have been neat to do an adaptation of like a 1930s or 40s sci-fi story, or to make a sci-fi film sort of in the fashion of like a 1950s sci-fi movie, or where the technology would be what people imagined it would be in the 50s. Like, I just think that would be a neat conceit to do. So you could do it like that, or you could make it a more modern, give it a more modern feel and a more modern aesthetic. It would totally depend on the story and what your intentions were as the artist. But I think either way is fine. Kirek 2011 says, you really do hate fan service for the sake of fan service. Yeah, I do. I do. Yes, I do. Ooh. Kane, yeah, Dana, yes, Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow, yeah. Kane 20C says, what baseball player do you think would be the best death matchup versus Randy Johnson? Let me look up. Yeah. Bob Gibson. Yeah. Bob Gibson versus Randy Johnson. Now that would be, yeah, that would be a good one. Power versus power. Okay, I'm going to start wrapping up the show. So final questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I do want to answer Scarpad Comic Trek's question, and then I'll do my usual wrap up, and then I'll come back for any final questions. But Scarpad's Comic Trek says, I noticed the pendulum swinging online in the great Shatner versus Takei feud. For years, it was Shatner that drew the ire of Trek fans. Now it's Takei. What's changed? I think what has changed recently is, Shatner commented on it recently and basically said, the people that are mad with me now are mad about things that happened 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 years ago. And it's hard to argue that point. Even if you are completely on George Takei's side as far as William Shatner being an asshole, William Shatner being, a diva and taking attention for himself as the star of the show and leaving just crumbs for the supporting cast, which, by the way, I completely believe. Like when George Takei and Walter Koenig talk about Shatner being a prick on the set of Star Trek and, bigfooting people and, wanting to get as many shots in the episode as he can and wanting to minimize I completely buy all of that. I don't have very much doubt at all that that is true. But it's been so long. And if they are still talking about it, at a certain point, you have to think, look, like I believe you and I think you're in the right about this. But at the same time, it's like showbiz stuff and you seem like you're doing okay now. And it's been a long time and maybe you should just let it go. I feel like that's what has changed, because I don't think, clearly William Shatner is an asshole. I don't see how there's any denying that. In his real personal life, William Shatner is a huge asshole and probably always has been. And, that's just the way it is. And I'm sure he was an asshole to a lot of people on Star Trek in the 60s. I'm sure he was an asshole to a lot of people in the movies. It's interesting that the cast members who seemed to like Shatner the most were Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley, who were the co-leads, who were not the people who felt like their screen time was being squeezed off by Shatner. So I feel like that's probably telling. But no, Shatner is an asshole. He's a prick and a prima donna. And I'm sure in the wrong circumstances, he's a nightmare to work with, or at least was back in the day. But it's been fucking 50 years, George. Maybe it's time to let it go, or at least stop talking about it, taking every opportunity every time you're asked about it to talk about it. So I think that's what's changed, is people have finally been like, yeah, Shatner's an asshole, but he's kind of right. It's been a while. Maybe you should just let it go, So anyway, I'm going to do my end of show plugs, and then I will come back to the chat real quick for some closing thoughts. But first of all, let's remember the charity links, charitylinks.page, which is a document that is maintained by our pal, Some Random Geek, that helps to direct people to some friends of ours with GoFundMes and various crowdfunding or PayPal links, whatever, if they need a helping hand financially. So if you want to help somebody out who needs help, check out charitylinks.page. And also the many, many links that Geek has been putting in the chat over the last few minutes. I would encourage you to make use of those if you want to help somebody out. Also, don't forget our friend Dana Cole has a live stream coming up tomorrow on her channel at 6 p.m. Eastern. It is the Saturday 6. And I don't think I have the link to tomorrow's Saturday 6 in the description. Dana, I don't know if you have set up the event yet or not. But if you have, I will go to your channel as soon as the stream is over, and I will add the link to the description of this live stream for anybody who sees it later. But it's tomorrow on Dana's YouTube channel, youtube.com/DanaColeDares, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, the Saturday 6. Check it out. I will be there watching and in the chat, and we will listen to Dana tell us all about some really, really exciting, wonderful things that have happened in her life over the past couple of weeks, and also some good news that has happened in the broader world lately. We can always use that. If you enjoy the work I do here on YouTube and you want to support my channel and you can afford it, I would encourage you highly to do so. You can do that by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, or becoming a channel member by clicking the join button down below the video. Either way, whether you become a member or a patron, one of the perks you can take advantage of is you can submit questions ahead of time for these Ask Away streams. And I always answer questions submitted ahead of time by patrons and members first thing on the Ask Away shows. Also, if you enjoy my YouTube work, you might want to check out the podcasts that I am on. They're both a part of the Let Me Listen family of podcasts. There's Late Seating, the movie review podcast that I do with Jason Harding, where we take a classic film and give it a fresh review and see if it deserves whatever reputation it has. The new episode of Late Seating that is up this week is available right now for your listening pleasure. It is our review of the 1966 Batman movie, starring Adam West as Batman. It was a fun show to do. It's a great movie to watch whenever I watch it. So check out the new Late Seating. And also, if you enjoy the Star Trek stuff, you can listen to the Star Trek comedy podcast that I co-star on alongside Jason and our very own Dana. And that is the Ensign's Log, which is the show where we play low-ranking officers serving aboard a certain Federation starship as it embarks on its continuing mission in the 24th century. Check out the Ensign's Log if you have not been listening to it. We are currently in our 5th season. It is going fantastically. The show has been really, really fun lately. And of course, it's always a ton of fun to make with Jason and Dana. So if you have not listened to it yet, I highly recommend you check out the Ensign's Log. Links to everything are in the description. Also, don't forget that this weekend, this Sunday at noon Eastern, is my patrons and members monthly hangout, where it's me and 12 at a maximum of 12, whoever gets there first, and we hang out for an hour in a Zoom call, and only patrons and members have the chance to actually get in on the call and be on the show with me and with all of us, but everybody can watch. It'll be on my YouTube channel. Starts at noon Eastern on Sunday. So that's all I have to say. Let me run through these last super chats and see what everybody else has had to say, and then we'll call the festivities to a close, shall we? Here's one from John Burns, who says Shatner also went up into space and saw a thin sliver protecting the Earth, full of this glorious life, and on the other side, death. Sorry, Bezos. Yeah, that's another thing too. I think Shatner's response to the space flight was thoughtful and was sort of poignant, and I think that won some sympathy for him as well, and deservedly so. I thought his response to it was, again, especially considering what a dick Shatner can be, I thought his response to the space flight was very nice and was very thoughtful and was very thought-provoking. So good for him. 255 AD says the new Dune movie kind of decided not to update tech. I haven't seen the new Dune movie, so I can't speak to that. Kirak 2011 says, last sneak-in question. Will you ever do a DS9 era? I'm not sure what that means. Do a DS9 era. If you can, you don't have to do it as a super chat. You can just do it as a regular chat message. But what do you mean by DS9 era? I'm not sure what you mean. Dane. Okay, that's the event, the Saturday 6. I will add that to the description. On Ensign's Log. Thank you, Kane. Will we ever do DS9 on Ensign's Log? Yeah, possibly, probably in some form. We've talked about it. We've talked about doing, moving to Deep Space Nine. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think I don't know I don't know exactly how it will happen, but yes, we have definitely talked about shifting to Deep Space Nine in some way when the time comes, for sure. Yeah. And good question. Thank you. And yeah, okay. I believe that's it. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all for your support, whether you're a patron or a member or you've thrown in a super chat tonight. I really appreciate all of it. Thank you for just being here and hanging out and asking questions. And I hopefully will see some of you tomorrow on Dana's channel for the Saturday 6. And then Dana and I will see you together on Wednesday for Trek Reluctantly. And we will be watching the last episode of North and South. So that'll be fun. And before then, I'll see you hopefully on Sunday for the patrons and member hangout. So take care, everybody. Hope everybody who celebrated had a good Turkey Day. And have a good night. Have a good weekend. Bye, everybody.